Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Trumbore with your nightly review for Thursday, April 11. Brought to you by Dollar Tree. I went to Dollar Tree today. Totally awesome, ultra deluxe dishwashing liquid. Look at the size of that bottle. That would cost you $84 at your local grocery store. Only $1, and it's made in America, not with China water. And check this out. Arizona sweet tea, that's 42 ounces of great tasting tea. $1 at Dollar Tree. Of course, if this was 42 ounces of beer, and you had 2 of them, or 84 ounces of beer, or like 7 cans, then you would need the goodness of Calder's horseradish sauce to cleanse the liver. Also, just $1 at Dollar Tree. That's where I do all of my shopping in these tough economic times, even though the market keeps hitting new highs. By the way, in the Masters, Mark Leishman of Australia is the leader in the clubhouse at -6, but Sergio Garcia, -5 through 10. And Tiger Woods just finished up, he's -2, had a uneven 70, but good enough for him at this stage. Ricky Fowler, -4 through 17. Okay, the Dow Jones. I really couldn't care less today. I was shopping at Dollar Tree. Dow hit another new high, up 61, 62 as we settle out at 14,864. I should have mentioned it is about 4:03 p.m. Eastern Time. S&P 500, another new all-time high, up 5. Both the Dow and S&P were up 0.4%. S&P now sits at 1593, and NASDAQ, though, was just up 2 points, but to an even 3,300. Gold 1560, oil 93.40, and the 10-year Treasury at 1.79%. The Tokyo Nikkei index was up another 2% to 13,549. Shanghai Composite down 0.3%, but London was up 0.4%, and Paris and Frankfurt were up 0.8%. Excuse me. Shares in Microsoft and Hewlett-Packard were down, in the case of Microsoft, about $1.30, Hewlett-Packard about $1.45, largely because of the news that the PC market shrank nearly 14% in the first quarter, its biggest recorded drop, 14%, as Windows 8 was blamed by analysts for making PCs less attractive to consumers. I told you this when Windows 8 came out. I hated it. I still hate it. This machine over here is Windows 7. That's what I upgraded to last fall. Said Bob O'Donnell, an analyst at IDC that came out with the study. At this point, unfortunately, it seems clear that the Windows 8 launch not only failed to provide a boost to the PC market, but appears to have slowed it. The radical changes to the user interface, removal of the familiar Start button, and the cost associated with touch have made PCs a less attractive alternative to dedicated tablets and other competitive devices. IDC's numbers showed global PC shipments of 76.3 million units in the first quarter, down 13.9% on the same period last year. This was worse than IDC's predicted decline of 7.7%, significantly worse. Now, figures from research company Gartner showed 79.2 million units were shipped in the first quarter, down 11.2%. Gartner drew a distinction between consumer and professional PC markets, saying the latter accounted for about half of all shipments and was growing, driven by continuing PC refreshes by business. However, Windows 8 was not making an impression here either, according to a Gartner analyst who told the Financial Times they're upgrading to Windows 7. Corporate users are very conservative about adopting anything new. Now, of course, this impacts the likes of Hewlett-Packard and, of course, Microsoft. Hewlett-Packard is still clinging to its #1 in the world market share position ahead of China's Lenovo, and Dell remains third, but HP's shipments fell 23.7% year on year according to IDC. Yesterday, I made mention of the Federal Reserve, publishing its March minutes in the morning rather than the afternoon as had been scheduled, because the central bank said it was doing so because they had accidentally released on Tuesday afternoon to a distribution list that I told you was comprised of mostly congressional staffers. What emerged after I had posted late yesterday afternoon was that among those on the list, and the list is about 150 actually, about a quarter of those were, quote, lobbyists at Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, Citigroup, and others, Barclays, Wells Fargo, US Bancorp. So that was kind of disturbing. I don't see really why they need to get special treatment when you can just pull it off your Bloomberg right away. It doesn't appear, though, that there was any advance trading late Tuesday ahead of the announcement that the minutes were being released before the market opened on Wednesday. But that was a bad mistake by the Fed. President Obama's budget, $3.8 trillion, $3.78 trillion. Editorial Wall Street Journal. The real news is that his budget ratifies much of the spending increase of the first term and tries to lock it in. He wants the Fed to spend $3.78 trillion next year, which would be 22.2% of national output, nearly 4 years into the economic recovery. The budget's supposed bow to Republicans is Mr. Obama's proposal for a modest change in annual cost of living adjustments for Social Security, the chained CPI. That would cut spending by about $130 billion and raises taxes by about $100 billion over the next year. Wall Street Journal supports the concept, but the White House also slips a Mickey into the proposal. This is the Journal. Even with this inflation change, federal spending would grow by more than if Mr. Obama simply let current law continue. This is because the president wants to eliminate the current caps on discretionary spending under the budget sequester that are set to save close to $1 trillion over the next decade. He wants to repeal the sequester by providing the only spending cuts. Let me back up. He wants to repeal the sequester. That is providing the only spending cuts in at least a decade. Obama's new spending ambitions include $50 billion for public works, more college aid, high-speed rail, the fiscal version of The Walking Dead, green energy giveaways, $2 billion more for battery-operated cars, even as the companies fail. Think Fisker. Manufacturing subsidies, full funding of Obamacare, job training, on top of the current 47 federal programs, and more. On the issue of defense spending, Chuck Hagel, Defense Secretary, has ordered Pentagon leaders to conduct a new review of the nation's military strategy in the light of the fiscal uncertainty. The administration proposes new fees for veterans in the military's TRICARE medical system, including an annual $140 fee for families in the standard fee-for-service program that would rise to $250 over 5 years. Also included is a proposal to raise annual enrollment fees in TRICARE's HMO-style system from $539 per family to as much as $750, and on these fee increases I totally concur. TRICARE has to be a target in any spending cuts on defense. Greece. The country's unemployment rate in January rose to a record 27.2% from a revised 25.7% in December. The jobless rate for Greeks aged 15 to 24, or the youth unemployment rate, is 59.3%. Gross domestic product shrank 6.4% in 2012, and the European Commission forecast it will contract another 4.4% this year. Eurostats released data on Euro housing prices, and in the fourth quarter in Spain, home prices fell 12.8% over the fourth quarter of 2011. And that's all about Spain's banking sector as well. The cost of the Cyprus bailout has risen from 17.5 billion euro to 23 billion euro, according to a draft document prepared by the country's creditors. With this new total, that means Cyprus will have to find 13 billion euro to secure 10 billion euro from the European Union and the IMF. Previously it was thought Cyprus would have to find 7.5 billion, so then now that's 13. So the winding up of Cypriot bank Laiki, or Popular, it's also known, and the writing off of a large portion of secured debt and uninsured deposits in the largest bank, Bank of Cyprus, would raise about 10.6 billion euro. Cyprus is now also set to sell off a large portion of its gold reserves in a move that will raise another 400 million euro. That still leaves Cyprus 2 billion euro short. Regarding this gold that Cyprus has to sell, this has impacted the price of gold the last day, in particular yesterday, Wednesday, when the announcement was made. Cyprus is the first Euro member to sell its reserves during this crisis. To raise 400 million euro, it will need to sell just over 10 million tons of the 13.9 million that is held in the central bank. Okay, 10 million of 13.9 million. That's what Cyprus has to sell 10. By contrast, Italy, the Italian central bank, holds 2,451 tons of gold, 70% of its total reserves, while Portugal holds 383 tons, accounting for 90% of its reserves. So imagine if Italy and Portugal begin to sell some of their gold. That wouldn't be too good for precious metals holders. But the Cyprus program, this whole bailout issue, now faces the hurdle of Germany's parliament. The budget committee of the Bundestag meets April 16, and then the full session of Parliament on April 18. Parliamentary budget experts in Berlin are still studying the details, and one opposition official said that there are still many questions to be answered. So this whole thing isn't totally settled yet. Public sector debt in Cyprus is going to peak, they think, around 126% of GDP in 2015. And the bailout document that needs to be approved by Germany's parliament is projecting that Cyprus' economy will contract 12.5% this year, or for the 2013-2014 fiscal year. The World Trade Organization lowered its forecast for global trade growth in 2013, saying economic improvements in the U.S. would not be enough to offset Europe's struggles, is what I've been saying. The WTO said improved economic prospects for the United States in 2013 should only partly offset the continued weakness in the European Union, whose economy is expected to remain flat or even contract slightly this year, according to consensus estimates. The dimmer outlook for trade this year follows a historically poor 2012. Global trade expanded just 2% last year, down from 5.2% in 2011. The 20-year average is 5.3. Now the organization is saying trade might expand about 3.3% in 2013. IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde warned of a three-speed global economy facing risk from a currency crisis and emerging markets or unsustainable debt in the U.S. and Japan. She was speaking at a New York conference. She said the world was dividing into three groups, some countries doing well, some on the mend, and some still in trouble. We do not expect global growth to be much higher this year than last. We are seeing new risk as well as old risk. Countries on the mend include the US, Sweden, and Switzerland. Countries that still had work to do included the Euro area and Japan, said Lagarde. In Japan, she warned that the public debt of 245% of GDP looks increasingly unsustainable. Now finally, as if French President François Hollande did not have enough trouble with his stagnant economy and scandal over his former budget minister's secret overseas bank accounts, we've learned this from Mali. His camel has been eaten. Grateful Malian authorities gave the baby camel to Mr. Hollande during a triumphant visit to Mali in early February, after French troops intervened to drive back Islamist rebels. Mr. Hollande, however, left his baby camel in the care of a family in Timbuktu. The family, evidently misunderstanding the purpose of the custody arrangement, proceeded to slaughter the camel and feast on it. Said an official in Timbuktu, as soon as we heard of this, we quickly replaced it with a bigger and better looking camel. The new camel will be sent to Paris. It was a present that did not deserve this fate. That's all for today. We'll be back with you on Monday. Check out Week in Review. I posted early Saturday. Bye-bye.